Hey everyone, welcome to another Power Monkey podcast. On today's episode, Chad and I interview Gabriel Gomez and Adam LaRue. They are two of the three owners and founders of O2X. It is a veteran-owned company. In fact, all three of them are former Navy SEALs. And it was actually very interesting to speak with them because O2X actually parallels what we do with Power Monkey quite a bit. They have a collection of over 200 experts from a variety of fields, and they take those expertise and bring it to first responders in the military to help them become better at what they do. So things like nutrition and sport performance and sleep performance, they have experts across the board, all over the country, and they bring these expertise through coaching seminars, through in-person seminars, through online coaching, and give these resources to first responders and through the military across the country. It's very interesting to be able to parallel a lot what we do with Power Monkey to what these guys at O2X are doing, and I really appreciate their approach, their incredible team, and to get their perspective on where they're going to be going next. Enjoy.
All right, Adam and Gabriel. Hey guys, appreciate you guys joining us today. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. And we may or may not have Paul joining us later as well, and we're looking forward to chatting with him as well. But you guys are what are known as tactical athletes, and your business is all about helping tactical athletes. And I wondered, even though that seems like a self-explanatory term, would you guys care to maybe give us your definition of what a tactical athlete exactly is?
Yeah, I will go back to honestly the first time I ever heard it utilized was in the military. Gabriel, Paul, and I all spent time active duty in the military at different times. Paul and I got out about 7 years ago before we started this company. Gabriel, a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah, I was in from college '87 through till '96, so a little bit before these guys were.
So the evolution of kind of where human performance and training and implementing science, somewhere around 2006, started hearing the term tactical athlete being utilized, and tactical athlete being utilized as it pertains to some of our human performance specialists that came in through the SEAL teams that were training us, preparing us for training and overseas deployments. And it was an interesting concept. Like, you guys are, clearly there's an athleticism to your job, occupational. What you're doing, you have to shoot, move, communicate. You're wearing body armor, 40, 50, 60 pounds plus a gear. You got to manipulate yourself through different environments. There's a psychological side to it. There's an emotional side to it. There's all these different aspects. And, that term started being thrown out and utilized, and it made a lot of sense. And for, the larger audience, like the tactical community, we look at the police, fire, military, groups that EMS, Department of Corrections, people that have physically, mentally, emotionally demanding jobs, that not necessarily are carrying guns. Clearly, like fire does not, EMS does not, there's an aspect of this that, a component that motivates us because, for one, we have the background as tactical athletes, but we care about the training and really longevity and sustainability. You talk about that in athletics all the time. Like, how do you perform at high levels for longer durations of time? But within the tactical community, it's fascinating because when you look at pro sports, there's an age group that pretty much everyone falls into for the most part. And then in the tactical community, you have people that are 17, 18 years old, and then you have people that are over 60. You have firefighters that are over 60 years old, that are working with, 22, 23-year-olds. Same thing in the military. And everyone for the most part, your roles might shift a little bit, but depending on the role, you have to do the job. So how do you maintain a high level physical, mental and emotional readiness for the job? So it's a little bit of a long-winded answer on the tactical, athlete and what that is, and who we work with, but that's the premise behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. In my mind, you guys are professional athletes, and the way that you put it is you're an even longer term professional athlete than what we know as professional sports. And it kind of makes me wonder too, you define, EMS and fire and police as tactical athletes. And Gabriel, I want to go to you now. I wonder if I can get your thoughts on, because what my mind goes to, and what I know a lot of people's mind goes to, is they see police, fire, EMS, especially, maybe a little overweight. So in my mind, it's a little bit like a nutritionist trying to give advice to an athlete, but the nutritionist is overweight. Do you guys see that the same way? And what are your thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, look, I mean, we go in there, and as Adam said, I think we've got the credibility when we go in there. We start talking about our program, on the human performance side. And initially, there was a lot of pushback on, you guys are going to come in there and you're going to try to make us SEAL, you got to try to make us Ironman, you got to try to make us, people that we're not, right? And our whole philosophy is, and if you look at our site, it's really to just get people to just, maybe 1% better every day, and just to have like small incremental improvements on a daily basis. And so that's what our program is really all about. So we go in there and let's just take the conditioning part. If we just get people to just exercise, maybe once every day or every other day, and it doesn't have to be body weight. It doesn't have to be weights or anything. It could be body weight, it could be bands, something very basic. Just get them to just be active, be more actively involved. And then you bring in the nutrition component. And we're not going to tell people to not go to a Red Sox game or a Patriots tailgater and not have nachos and drink and have a good time and all that. But we're just going to tell people and show them, there's ways that you can do things just a little bit smarter, a little bit better, that you can still have all the fun you want, but you're going to have it, a little bit impact every little bit helps. And on the sleep side, all these things are related, right? So if you're sleeping better, if you're eating better, you're going to be feeling better, you'll be able to work out better. And over time, you will start seeing a significant change, but it takes quite a bit of time. Like, our first big, I'd say, department that we worked with was here in Boston Fire Department, literally the oldest fire department in the country. And we walked in, and you would think that most of these people have not really taken, human performance seriously. But after a period of time, I'd say for over a year, the commissioner at that time went back and did an analysis and realized that, my gosh, my guys are actually following the recommendations that you guys had about making certain kinds of food in the firehouse. Actually, we kitted out, fitted out their workout areas, their gyms in all 34 firehouses within Boston. And they were going in there and doing little things. And some guys couldn't probably even, run a half a mile to a mile on their own. And here they are working out 20 minutes at one time, maybe got up to an hour after a while. And people were slowly but surely losing a little weight, adding a little bit of body muscle, not getting injured as often. And as a result, they were able to perform better. And in the end, they're actually able to do their job better and be able to be there side by side with the people they work with. Because our goal really is for somebody to come in at 21, 22 years old, as Adam said, is for them to ultimately finish their career when they're older, whether they're 55, 60 or whatever, as healthy or as strong as they started back when they first started. That's our goal, really.
Yes. So how do you, that Gabriel, you kind of nailed it there at the end, is like, how do you finish your career as strong as you started? Like when you walked in the door. So you guys all know this from, being athletes, is you got to save the young guys from themselves. Because sometimes you walk into a department and they're like, we got these guys that they appear super fit, right? And it's like, you do the needs analysis and you look at what they're doing, and fitness is relative, right? No one debates that there's an Ironman and a strongman, and they're both fit in their right. But if you put, if you took the Ironman and put them into picking up an Atlas stone, or you put a strongman and you threw him in the water, like how's that going to work out for them, right? So you also have to prepare specifically and customize the training for the job. So that every tactical group needs to be trained a little bit differently. And within the tactical spheres, there is different types of, roles and jobs. There's different requirements on police unit or law enforcement. There might be detectives, there might be plainclothes, there might be crime suppression units, there might be surveillance teams, and there's different demands and challenges on each of those jobs. So what we really enjoy doing is making sure it's customized. The premise of the pillars of the education and sleep, nutrition, conditioning, resilience, stress management, that we boil down to an eat, sweat, thrive model, but make it very simple, which we learned a lot over the last 7 years about making it simple. And simple doesn't mean easy, right, guys? You know that.
Right.
Like, how do you make something that people are actually going to do. And you highlighted one of the things, Chad, is that it's not like, you kind of look around. The reason why cancer and cardiac disease and obesity and injury rate and sleep issues are extremely prevalent in some of the tactical units is because they're not in good condition. And so how do you slowly work and implement that into their lifestyle, into their job, so they make successful habits? So, there's top 1% guys, like we train Ron Ortiz, who you guys know, was a firefighter in the Broward Sheriff's Office. Like, he was at our workshops, we were down at BSO, like clearly a top performing athlete, we do the Chicago Blackhawks and on a pro sport thing, but you also got to go down to the lowest level and do a lot of education. That's what we're big on, education.
Now, when the company was first started, I mean, if you look at your team is substantial. It's pretty large, and the backgrounds of the people that are contributing is pretty vast. Was that the intention when you guys were first starting out, or were you just saying, here's our background as tactical athletes, we think we can, work on the conditioning side, or bring some mental toughness, or bring some components to what we utilize as soldiers to, the people that we think might benefit from this, and then slowly started to say, let's add a nutritional component, let's add a mental training component? Was it something that organically grew, or initially you had the idea of saying, let's try to take all these pillars and kind of combine them into one type of a setting?
Yeah, we pulled them all together right away, because we recognize from a practitioner standpoint, like, what developed high levels of performance, optimized superior performance over time. So it did holistically. Was it as clean as a education across the board? We have some very funny, like our first conversation we had with some big city municipality tactical units that are not used to human performance. We were talking about this holistic. They were talking about all these pillars coming together, and they were like, "That was the worst meeting we've ever had." We had no idea what you guys were talking about. Like, we're trying to get guys, and I'm like, I don't know if I take offense to that, or is that a good thing? But you said yes. You guys said yes, so something happened in that meeting that way, right? But they were like, that we had no idea how you guys were going to put all these pieces together. And to me, that was like a really missing link for us in the military. It was like how to interconnect all these pieces and how to make sense, because you can read a book, 20, 40, 100 books on each one of these topics, and then end up, and if you're a student of the game, and end up really confused on how you put them together. Like, how does this all work? And by the way, not all of us are LeBron James that has like endless amounts of money and time to have people help train us on these things. We have to do this ourselves. We don't have all these resources and assets at our fingertips. We have to do what we have a busy job. We have our family lives. That's another component of it. How do you implement it into very busy, challenging lives and the jobs that are very stressful, jobs that are very busy? How do you make this thing digestible and attainable for people to do?
I think one thing, it's a great question. It's, we've got, the background of the three founders. I mean, we're all very similar, but we all were part of, some elite teams and all that. But I think one of the things that we all learned when we were in the service and in the teams is that, we always wanted to learn and make ourselves better at everything we did, whether it was jumping, shooting, diving, whatever we were doing, navigating, anything, we wanted to learn and get better. And we realized that we wanted to go out there and try to find who are the best people out there, even if they're not military, right? They could be people that you normally wouldn't even hang out with, but they could be the best jumpers in the world. They could be the best shooters in the world. And so that's one of the things we gleaned when we were in the teams. And when we started this company, we realized, look, all three of us have some great backgrounds and all that, but the reality is, let's do what let's learn from what we did in the teams. And we've got access to some of the best nutritionists in the world, because we saw those when we were in the teams. We have access to some of the best human performance conditioning people, some of the best stress mitigation people, some of the best sleep people out there that can come back here and actually teach the curriculum that we're the ones that designed the curriculum, but we know we're not presumptuous enough to know that we're the ones that are going to teach it. So we go out there and find who are the best people out there in the world, just like we learned from the best people in the world when we were in the teams. And now we actually use that same philosophy and we bring the best people. And that's where our specialists, if you look on our website, their backgrounds a good number of them, Adam and Paul worked with the teams, and a good number of them come from referrals from other, special mission units out there that have worked with these type of people before. So
we spend a lot of time finding, not only those who have this, the science and education and the pedigrees behind it, but those are also really good teachers. And you guys know from being in the training world and understanding is that, you can find people with degrees all over the place, and people that have a lot of science expertise, scientific expertise and backgrounds, but finding, people that are passionate about teaching and that can talk to the group. I mean, a lot of most of the groups we work with, minus prospects and stuff, they're all adults. So how do you, really, we spend a lot of time learning how to be good teachers. We talk about experiential learning, people making it very interactive, making it relevant to the group. So, when it's outrolled, and we do a lot of training. So we find some of the best, we bring them in, we train them, we onboard them, we put them through our own training pipeline before they ever step in front of one of the groups we're training. Care a lot about that.
I find it's interesting when I first found the company, and I spoke to Chad about this a little bit too, how many parallels there are between what you guys are doing and what we do with Power Monkey. We feel like we're in a similar boat, coming more from the athletic background rather than from the military background, of trying to piece together a lot of elite people within their own specific fields to try to give people a better appreciation of how to tie things in together. So looking over, I mean, your team is it's enormously, I'm surprised at how many people you're able to navigate. Now, of this 150 experts plus that you guys have on board, how is their interaction? Are they people that just kind of you pick and choose according to the event that or the group that you're working with, and say, this person is the right fit? It's a location-based thing. We're missing XYZ from what you guys need, and this is the person that we think best fits for it. Is that how you guys kind of use your team and strategically place them?
For sure. And we have an amazing headquarters team here that's, kind of, in touch with, there's a lot of people that take care of logistics and moving parts on that one. We hone our education program here. We make sure that we customize the education, the interaction with the specialists, the pre-briefs, the extra action reports, like the filter, the improvement process. So the answer is, we kind of bring, all these facets and aspects together here, within our headquarters staff. But when we pick the team, I look at it as it's a little bit, it's not overly scientific, but knowing their backgrounds and specialties, all these specialists have expertise and studies in particular areas. Sometimes it's post-traumatic stress and the impacts on sleep. It could be blast or concussions, and prolonged blast concussions and the impact on, balance and performance, things like that. On the nutrition side, it could be, protein and how it's absorbed into the muscles. There's so many aspects. So to know everything they're doing is tough and challenging, but we also know we keep in touch with them. They're a part of our team. It doesn't matter if someone's in California or San Francisco or Colorado or Texas, they're very much a part of our family. And that's what we're trying to really continue to build. As it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we do have over 200 specialists now. I can go through and we can talk about the kids that they have and the stories that they got and the backgrounds. And clearly that gets more challenging as it gets bigger, but we're not trying to lose that, that close-knit, tight, familial side of that. But yeah, when we pick the teams for the specialists, we do try to pick the right specialist for the group that we're working with. Sometimes proximity and location, but more than that, we try to get the right specialist, the right skill set to deliver to that group. And it might be experience with fire or police. It could be more, concussion training. Like I mentioned, it's, kind of like a baseball coach picking, hey, there's a lot of lefties on this team. Maybe we should get some lefty pitchers that are going to come up. And it's kind of a funny analogy, but it's what we spend a lot of time doing here.
Absolutely, fill in the gaps. Now, Chad, if you don't mind, I want to take things back a little bit. I want to kind of tie it a little bit into what we do with the thinking about it from an athletic perspective. And both Chad and I kind of went through this ourselves after having finished our competitive careers. And we see this a lot in the athletic world of athletes not really having a path. once their careers are over athletically, and your life is so tied to being an athlete that when that last competition is over, it goes from like a high to what is my life defined as if I'm not an athlete anymore. And I think Chad and I were lucky to be able to find an outlet to be able to use our expertise in sport to be able to bring it to more people. And I'm curious, my question is whether or not you find the same thing to be prevalent in the military world, where your person is defined by your military experience. And when you're done with it, did you kind of know that you wanted to do this, or was it something that kind of you fell into? How did it come about, and whether or not you feel like a similar thing happens in the military with people coming out and having not really a place to be able to say, okay, what's my defined role now that I'm not actually serving anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, no,
I did talk about Gabriel, but you're 100% right. 100%. Like, you know, people's identity are sometimes tied to what their job was, right? In the military, like clearly, like you can see how much pride, you know, individuals have, like our service members have, of like being a veteran of, you know, the U.S. Marine Corps, right?
Yeah.
The Navy or the military special operations community or each branch of the service. So there's a lot of identity and passion tied to what they're doing, and there's purpose, Dave, more than anything. And Chad, you guys know that there's a purpose what people get behind, and I do think there is a lot of challenges transitioning from active duty or reserves and coming into the private sector and be like, what am I going to do next? I was so mission driven. I wore a uniform. I served a greater cause. I was on a team. I had a locker room, sort of, right? And so how does that transition to moving on and finding new passions? I'll turn it over to Gabriel.
Yeah, I actually think it's one of the hardest things that people go through, and you guys experience it yourself, right? I mean, you're at a super high level, and then the next day, I mean, no pun intended, you know, somebody's not even answering your text or your phone call or your voicemail, you know, and it's just, you're at top of Mount Olympus at one point, and then the next day you're still the same person, but you're no longer part of whatever organization you were, or the team you were in. And the same thing comes out of the military, especially if your whole identity is wrapped around the fact that you were in the military and whatever unit you were with. And I think the three of us here, the founders here, you know, we're all very similar in one way, and that is, you know, when we got out, we wanted to find a way to continue serving, right? And because that's the reason we joined the military. We didn't join the military to get, you know, to make money or anything like that. It was really to be part of the team, to be part of the best teams out there, and really to serve. And service is what goes through our DNA the thickest. And that's where the three of us met. You know, these two, obviously, Paul and Adam, literally worked almost kind of from day one when they got in the Navy all the way through their whole career in the teams. And then I was fortunate that they moved down to where I live down here in the South Shore, south of Boston. And we just wanted to continue that same kind of philosophy in terms of like camaraderie, teamwork, and service. And we said, look, we're going to start something. We're not sure what the company's going to do, but it's going to be service oriented. And, you know, right now we're serving the people who serve us. And so it's, I'm not saying that we got lucky and that we're part of the fortunate, but it's just an extension of what we did in the military. And quite frankly, I think there's a big opportunity to help and to have some kind of program out there that helps, whether it's military people or professional athletes, you know, once they're done with their careers. Because the reality is the average professional athlete is probably not even 30 when he's done with their career. I mean, some obviously are lucky and they get to extend through the 30s, but if you look at football or something like that, or even, I don't know about hockey, but I guarantee you the average professional athlete there is in his 20s when they get out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I find that to be really interesting, because I think it's something that we've tried to do as well. We're saying, like, not only are we trying to benefit the people that we work with, but we're also giving athletes an avenue to be able to figure out a path once their actual competitive careers are over. And it seems like you guys are doing the same thing. And I didn't know if it was something you actively were seeking out, or recognize that, hey, you know, we're helping out in a lot of ways through the company. We're also giving an outlet to people who are similar to us to be able to find another way once their actual careers are over. This is a secondary career that we're actually creating that wasn't there beforehand.
Yeah, and we love the fact that a lot of our specialists, especially our leads, are all former military people, right? So we have, it's a great way for us to bring in former either teammates or, you know, teammates per se, because they were service members as well. and give them an opportunity to spend some time and maybe find their next chapter in life. And because hopefully everybody's got multiple chapters, and that's just one. And you don't just live off of the fact that you were a pro athlete or a team guy at one point or another. Right?
I also think about your time in the military, or like say active within athletics. Like your whole job, your whole life is training to be the best that you can. You're so focused on your skill, your craft, your sport. You don't have you're not picking your head up and thinking about, what am I doing next? You don't even want to think about that side
right.
of it, right? Like you're like, I want to maximize my career. If anything, you're thinking about, how can I extend my career another year or 2 years? What are the things I can do to like wring the towel out on this? And when that time comes, it's usually fairly abrupt. I know in athletics, it's fairly kind of ruthless, right? In a way, it's like, okay, you can't make it. I'm sorry, you're not going to be on the team this year. It doesn't matter how loyal that you are. It happens to, it happens to everybody. So I think that there's some different challenges on the athletic side versus, the tactical side. The tactical side, you can continue to, in some ways you can continue to extend your career as long as you're kind of promoting and finding jobs and doing well. But it makes it for a big transition, because you're not transitioning at 3.5, 4 years as maybe a professional athlete. You're transitioning. You still have to get another job after 30 years of service. You might be only 48, 50, 55 years old. So there's quite a long time that you still have to work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I had a question for you guys that had to do with me saying that the core of what you guys do is training and human performance. But now that I heard you guys explain that, it sounds like it's serving is the core of what you guys do. And you do that through training and human performance. But going back to that, the way that you guys are trying to be the best that you can be with this. And we love what you say here. Like, Adam, you went all the way back to saying we had to learn to be better teachers and the basics of all those things, and bringing everything together as a company, getting the right people on board to help do what you do of training, be better at training and human performance to help as many people as you possibly can. And of course, with your background, being on SEAL teams and everything else, came in with an extraordinary amount of knowledge in training and human performance that you learned along the way, that you gained through experience and everything else. I'm curious to know, and I'm always curious about this with people in any field, when you came in with that base amount of knowledge, is there anything that was surprising to you that you learned along the way, being outside of the SEAL teams, but now trying to help other people that you didn't know before about human performance?
It's the answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely. I think early on before this too, and I think you look at, Gabriel and Paul and myself, we kind of look at our backgrounds and our families. Like I always go back way before the SEAL teams in the military, is that, the things that we kind of brought with us, it's like this passion of, helping people or serving, or, what the qualities and characteristics, the values. Like the most important thing when we put together O2X, we talked about values more than anything. What type of organization we want to build and grow, and when we look back at it, it wasn't necessarily, listen, we're trying to be on to the next chapter, right? And you know what, we're not hiding from 12 years of military service. It's very much a part of our identity and who we are. But we definitely reflect back on our whole lives and our careers and our experiences and everything we learned across the way that helped formulate the mission, vision, and like our guiding principles here at O2X. I think from an interesting standpoint, that I look at a lot of the workshops, and one thing that I didn't have a ton of experience was probably like customer service, right? And so when you look at human performance and you look at training, like we can talk about I've learned, I sit in the same, sometimes similar presentations 20 plus times, and I'm still learning things from our specialists. So it's one of those things that I'm mind blown. Every new story, every new study that comes out, like that's an infinite learning process of like how to get better. The methodology, implementation, goal setting, anything on the other topics of sleep, nutrition, resilience, stress management. But, I look at what we deemed in the military as like being squared away, is like having everything, all the logistics buttoned up. having like the course curriculum tight, the learning objectives, dialed in, optimizing your time there and knowing how much time. I think now I focus definitely a lot on the experience we're trying to provide. And I don't know if I thought about that ever in the military. I mean, we know we had, if we were out there and, we're staring up at the sky waiting for the clouds to, part ways so we can jump or any of the other things, or what training and learning objectives we had to go to. I didn't really think about the entire experience for the people that are there. And I think that's something clearly as a business we think a lot about now, but I think it's also really important for learning. You brought up teaching before too. I probably think more about teaching and presenting and public speaking and what people's, how to meet them where they are. I feel like those are some things, and building like really strong relationships. I think those things are really important, especially this year over COVID. I mean, it's not like we were, we had, health and wellness was ever questioned in society of being like having healthy and strong immune systems. Like when this COVID happened, like, clearly it brought it to the forefront. If some fire or police chief or some military they didn't believe in it, this is important. Now these people are frontline workers and they have vulnerable immune systems. Right. So, when this thing happened, we had to, how do we provide that, that support? How do we provide that impact to these organizations and groups? And just looking at things through, constantly learning, looking through those lenses is something we continue to grow and evolve. And we're continuing learning in every aspect of this role, this job, and building relationships and helping people and helping departments get through tough times like COVID is something that, we're still learning and still trying to improve on 1% every day.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to look at the first kind of workshop book that we used as a curriculum, our first workshop, I think, was in April or May of 2015. So almost 6 years ago. If you look at what we're doing now, there's just been a progression of each. I almost say literally almost every workshop, at least in almost every single workshop, we get better at what we present and the materials get better. We have different specialists, as Adam said. We learn something almost at every single workshop that we then incorporate after the AARs into the next workshop. So I would argue that each workshop literally is better than the previous one. And I hope the previous ones were, still at 100. These other ones, like these go to 11 now, right? So it's just, not to use the old term, this one goes to 11, but that's part of like our DNA back in the teams was how do we just keep getting better, right? We're not set on, because I think we all had pretty good knowledge when we did our first workshop from our experience in the teams collectively. And we thought, wow, that workshop was phenomenal. It was just amazing. But if you were to look at that workshop compared to what we're doing now, it's pretty significantly different, in a lot better way, right?
Also knowing the jobs too. The more we talk and engage, and like coming back to those relationships, and they're sharing the challenges of their jobs in law enforcement or in the fire service. I mean, a lot of them are like family lineage of like serving. So you're kind of getting the history lesson and you're hearing everything that's going on. So what Gabriel says, the curriculum is evolving. Our understanding of their jobs and the nuances behind those jobs is evolving too. And so how do we best customize it for those individuals to be the best that they can be? And
have you guys had to change quite a bit this past year? I mean, you do a lot of in-person workshops and on-site stuff. How has your business been impacted in this past year? Have you done a lot more virtual stuff now as a transition, completely virtual? What has changed for you guys within the past year?
So believe it or not, we have done a little bit more virtual, but the first responders, military, the tactical group is used to that in-person training. I think reflect on boot camps and, training academies and stuff like there's certain things they can't do virtually. They have to, roll the hoses out and charge lines. They have to go to the range. They have to do these things. So, we did, do a few more things virtually this year. We have a mobile app and, we have a lot of people utilization of these remote resources and assets, but we trained over 4,000 people in person this year. So we still did a lot of that. I think, some of the challenges and nuances behind the curriculum, we've implemented in different ways. Maybe we have less people in workshops, but, lucky enough that through a ton of travel during COVID, 4,000 people trained in 20 different states. We did not have one COVID case.
Nice.
Knock on wood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still have a
Right.
couple more months left on that one. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So one of the things that's interesting, we host a Power Monkey camp twice a year. We bring in about 150 people, full week-long adult fitness camp in the woods of Tennessee. Very cool thing that we're coming on to our 8th year. And one of the things that kind of comes out of that type of an experience when you're in person are the relationships that are built with someone that maybe lives on the other side of the world, have similar interests, but obviously different backgrounds, and connections that are made. And, things that are, whether that's, jobs that are come out of it, or further understanding of the way people do things. Have you noticed that when you guys do in-person events that, yes, you're working with a particular community, but you bring people together and then they go out and end up talking more and building bigger relationships? Has it turned into a much larger network where you guys are kind of the center point, or do you guys always feel like they have to come back to you for the information that you're kind of projecting?
No, I think, what's a great part about this is connecting first responders and people that are training tactical athletes across the country. So the network, the world gets so small quick.
Yeah.
You always know that. And the specialists all talking with each other, the friendships that are grown, the collaboration that happens, the opportunities that arise on, within the different departments. And, that's just a fascinating thing. And that's just been a byproduct of just connecting and bringing. You guys know, you're bringing 150 top talented people together, and they're connecting, and they just get to know each other. And there's just such a power in relationships and network, and people doing good out there.
Have you noticed an area where maybe it's dependent on the group that you're working with, but where there's a number one need, or saying like, this is definitely top priority, whether it's like a conditioning aspect or a nutrition aspect? Is there something that predominantly tends to be the area where most people need the biggest help within your groups, or is it pretty vast?
Yeah, Adam's gonna be able to answer this better, but I guess I'm not as surprised anymore, but their curriculum has evolved as a result of it. But I'd say that the part about the Thrive, about above the head and between the ears part of the curriculum, is actually, I think, the one that has the strongest focus and probably has the most impact, and it has probably the most feedback and resonance with the participants. I'm not taking away from the nutrition part or from the sleep part or the conditioning part, but it's really about above, everything above the neck and between the ears part, whether it's, breathing exercise, whether it's yoga, whether it's handling resilience and dealing, grievance counsel, things like that. It's just that part, I think, is really, I think, become a bigger part of our 4 to 5 day curriculum part, and that continues to grow.
Yeah, breaking down stigmas behind mental health and people getting help is huge, and I think we're still chipping away, and we're still like at the infancy of the world, people coming forward and kind of talking about those things, getting help. And if you're in the tactical community, it's not, if something is going to happen that's very traumatic, it's when, it's tough. It's a challenging job. They come out on their, whether come on scene to a car accident, whether they're on a notification team, whether they lose some of their own teammates, whether they get injured themselves. In every different service, they see a lot of tragedy, and they see a lot of, very challenging scenarios and situations. So, rightfully so. We say like, hey, you sign up for these jobs, you sign up for post-traumatic stress. Like that's just part of it. But whether it goes from PTS to PTSD, is the frequency and the intensity of those signs and symptoms, of those, those byproduct of that event. So what can we do to preventative? And that's like, you guys all know that it's preventative versus curative. Like these things are going to happen. Let's not be reactionary. Let's get in front of these things. Let's do the training up front. Let's make a most resilient mind and body that we possibly can. So when these things happen, we can bounce back. We can be there for each other. There can be support there across the board, and we're not afraid to talk about these things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Gabriel, you mentioning that the mental training is the biggest part of it. I love that, and I think it's the biggest part of anything that anyone can learn. I'm just going to the side and talking about me teaching somebody weightlifting. If I don't talk about the mental side of that at least a little bit, then I may be the best, weightlifting coach in the world. But if they don't know, if they don't have a method to apply it, if they don't have the mental capacity to take small steps, as you guys mentioned, and know how to turn what I'm trying to give them into a habit, so to speak, then it's kind of all for nothing, right? So the mental part of it is huge. But I noticed on your website that you guys do screenings and assessments, and I assume that those are physical. So I wondered if you could touch on that just a little bit as far as what specifically you guys are looking for. Is it all physical? And if so, is it, things like mobility and strength and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we have a couple assessments. One, years ago, it's probably about 6 years ago now, we created a human performance assessment. And it's what we call it's like our Myers-Briggs, our strengths finders, our EQ of human performance. So we got all our specialists together, we collaborated, we kind of built a series of questions and an algorithm that generates a score on eat, sweat, and thrive. So you get all three different scores, for this HP assessment, and it gives you like a readout or report. So one of the assessments is just like a baseline. It's like, where are you? Clearly, like our program from a quantitative standpoint, we want to show metrics. For one, we want to hear great feedback and we want them to see some transformational change, but we want to quantify the impact over time. But we also want to give people a baseline of where they're at. So we have an Eat, Sweat, Thrive, we call our HP assessment that we're doing for a really long time. Right now within the tactical community, you're talking about, we have over like 1 million data points now. We can see these trends, and this also helps advance our curriculum. If we see if we see an area or direction that is needed and support, then we move in that direction. We can utilize, like, say, those general stats to help individuals, but help our curriculum advance, and then also to be able to provide the much needed customized service. So we usually look at that and we talk to a department. We're able to kind of aggregate those scores and say, hey, chief, hey, commissioner, hey, commander, this is kind of where you're at, and this is going to show improvement. So that's our HP assessment. Our readiness assessment, that's more of a movement. We have this, looked at some issues that come up in the tactical community, which is shoulders, back, hip, and knees. And we look at those things. We look at things like grip strength and the difference between, your left and right side. We look at your, knee to wall. We look at a core stabilization. So we have like about 5 tests that we have. There's some studies behind each one of those tests, but the way we collaborate it together. And there's a questionnaire that goes associated with that even talks about the psychological side of it. And the psychological side being like, the pain level scale, injuries, your fear of injuries before, and all those things are, scientific studies, but the way we package it all together is pretty unique. And then we give you a profile of you as an individual, and we say, hey, these are the areas that you need to kind of work on. And it works in conjunction with, a full body type of head, mind, body type thing, your HP assessment, and then here's some 1% changes to get better. So we try to make it, the whole program, be complete, holistic, and also complementary of each other.
Yeah. And how do you guys implement that work into an individual's training program or their daily life? Say, if you find that they fail every single test, just as an example, how do you approach that? What steps do you have them take to make those changes?
Yeah, and it's Chad, it's not too much of a pass or fail thing. It's definitely like a sliding scale of like, hey, these are the like areas you need to get better. So a lot of those recommendations come in the form of like, hey, this is where, from an injury perspective, this is where you need to implement. There's some correctives, some exercise, some movement, mobility. Here's some, you have quite a bit of gap in strength and stability or mobility issues on the left side versus the right side, or shoulder versus knee. Let's try to like diagnose this. I want to say diagnose is, I use that term, not from a medical standpoint.
Right.
Let's try to identify some areas where we can help you improve, and let's implement this into your training program. When we, a large part of our program is staffing. So if you look at what O2X does, we staff full-time specialists, like, a lot of people that you see on our website, at different departments and units. And it's not just that one person. They come with the army of O2X behind them. And then you usually do those screenings on top of that. And then also, education and training workshops. So when we implement with a department, unit, military organization, professional sport team, we try to package that all together with like full-time specialists that are going to work with you guys between the seams. We have an online services and mobile apps and reach back support. We have those workshops, and we have the screenings. They all interfit together.
Awesome, man. It's easy to see you guys have done an incredible job and have everything down. And I'm sure you have helped a lot of people and will continue to do so. From my perspective, Dave, I just have one more question. And, being that Dave and I are very much deep into the CrossFit community, that's the only reason why we get to teach what we teach. Our sports were very small before this, and they've grown exponentially because of CrossFit. And Adam, for you, CrossFit came around, I'm guessing probably somewhere in the middle of your career. And I wonder, is that something that you were aware of in the middle of your career, whenever it was? Is it something that you took to? And if so, is there anything that you've learned from that from a human performance standpoint?
Yeah. First time I did a CrossFit workout and heard of CrossFit was 2004 in Iraq.
Yeah.
That was the very first time. And, we had some jokes about it, you know what I mean? Early on, like, what is this? What do you do? Just very competitive, the guys around.
Right.
And then you get humbled by a workout and you're like, okay, so let's talk about this. Like, that didn't look hard, but it was really hard.
Yeah.
And so it's not really competitive. And of course we did have, when people dove into it really hard, there was a considerable amount of injuries, as you guys can imagine, like people going too hard, too much, and not knowing like periodization programs and how to build. And it's clear, like Matt Frazier doesn't do random workouts every day. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a certain plan that you get to put a certain amount of weight over your head or on your back or pull off the ground. Right. So there's a periodization and methodology to it. So kind of fast forward is that in 2006, we were doing some training out in the Midwest, and we drove out to Santa Cruz. And that happened to be, and we just showed up and we drove there, and that was the first CrossFit center. There was one affiliate at the time, and that was the weekend. We just showed up on the Saturday of the first CrossFit certification or workshop that they ever really had. They were like, hey, this is the first time. So we got to, talk to some of the originators of CrossFit, and actually some of the guys we were with ended up going to work with them. Guys like, Joe Alexander, who ran the workshops for a long time, the certification program, Pat Sherwood, who used to work out in his garage.
Right.
And then it just evolved. And, one thing that I thought was really appreciative of CrossFit is that they continue to honor the heroes. And I really did appreciate that. One of Paul and I's closest friends was Nate Hardy, named Nate, the workout Nate. He passed away. He got killed in Iraq, in Baqaba. And, he in 2008. So not many people know 248 is February 4th, 2008, and, after he was killed overseas, we put together a workout for Nate and sent it to CrossFit HQ. We're like, hey, Nate had this monster kettlebell that was like bigger than one we ever seen. This is before they were like 2 poop kettlebells and stuff. Right. You can only get them in Russia, it's, and so he had this thing to just impress his neighborhood off of that. And he didn't like running. So there was like a lot of personality that we threw out with like the 248, workout there. And so, to see that and to see like when that comes up, and we're coming up on it now, February 4th. And it's amazing how many years go by, but I've always appreciated that. The community aspect of what CrossFit's done. Early on in O2X, we used to do these, the challenge ourselves, we were never more humbled by like Mother Nature, things that, we trained in the weight room for things that we we were preparing for ourselves for outdoors.
Yep.
And going outdoors, we started originally with this like base to peak mountain race that we would, or mountain, challenge. And we had education speakers. That was rewinding back 7 years now. And, it was funny because, Matt Frazier was at one of our first races there.
Loon.
And Lou, a good buddy of mine is Matt O'Keefe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt O'Keefe's a good friend of mine, who I've known since, 8 years now. And it was kind of cool to see the evolution of, how CrossFit even has evolved, in the last couple of years. So, I mean, kind of a long-winded answer, but that's our connection, with it. And, we get excited about, people get excited about, fitness and, what they've done to expand and bring people's awareness to picking up a barbell or dumbbell, getting out there and building community around fitness. Obviously I think that's been the exciting part. It's been impressive from a business owner's perspective, just to see the expansion and growth. And I can only imagine the challenges that they have with quality control and all the other things that come with it. So that's we actually had a conversation recently with the new CrossFit CEO. It wasn't too long ago. Right before he took.
Yeah, they just got bought by like a Boston private equity firm, and they brought in this guy to be the CEO, who's got more of a tech background, but he's a big CrossFit person. So I think he actually owns a couple of CrossFit gyms himself.
Right.
You guys know more about this stuff.
Yeah. We're hoping to get him on the podcast for sure. But I love CrossFit. I'm forever grateful for CrossFit. CrossFit's why we're talking to you guys. Dave and I had the opportunity to work with the SEALs a couple times and different things like that because of CrossFit. So we're absolutely forever grateful. And you bring up Nate, the workout, Nate, and could you remind us of what exactly that workout is? I think this is a good reminder and a good time to do that, especially being that February is coming up.
Yeah, so it's was it 2 muscle ups, 4 handstand push-ups, and 8 kettlebell, 2 pood kettlebell swings.
And
20 minutes.
20 minutes. And
20-minute AMRAP.
My favorite part about that is that there's no running. I'm a weightlifter. I've got big quads, and running is not my friend at all.
It's right up my alley. This is a workout I'll probably do today. I was like, oh, this is great.
Well, me too. It's like, I appreciate that, and then that was always like, that fit him perfectly, like that was his carry. He was a big man.
Yeah.
You might be able to get away from him, but if he gets a hold of you.
Sounds like he had some gymnastics to him too. This is it's a pretty good gymnastics workout. Well, guys, we're getting close to the end here, and we always like to finish up our podcast with a couple quick questions. Are you guys good to stick around for a couple more quick ones?
Sure.
So first one, Chad and I keep tallies on this one. You guys can both answer separately, but what sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics? Adam, you can go first.
Weightlifting, definitely.
Wow, that
yes.
was easy.
I started out powerlifting at a very young age. So competing in powerlifting events was, weightlifting for sure.
All right,
Adam, you have no idea how much I appreciate this. This tally is getting ridiculous. I'm so far behind. I needed that point. And I'm not trying to persuade you in any way there, Gabriel, but I need some help.
No, I'm gonna have to go with weightlifting only because plebe year at the Naval Academy, you had to do gymnastics as part of PE, and I quickly learned that I could barely do a cartwheel. So,
Chad, you picked up 2 points in one episode.
I'm not a big guy, but I would definitely gravitate towards weightlifting if I had to pick between the two.
All right, you just made Chad very happy,
Incredible. Man. I appreciate that, guys.
One more question from my end. Any guests that you think would be great for us to have on the podcast? Anybody that you've come across recently?
Yeah, or a couple, like say resilience specialists that we have, like Dan Knassen.
Oh yeah,
Dan Knassen is one of our teammates, and he's just he's probably one of the most impressive guys.
You just Google him and you'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's how you spell it? It's CNOSSEN. That's his last name. Yeah.
Okay, we'll check it out.
Awesome.
He's I don't know how many gold medal, silver medal Paralympians that he's won the last.
So first U.S. Olympic athlete to win the biathlon.
Oh, all right,
Nice.
awesome. Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. He was a Paralympic athlete. I think he's got the last Paralympic games. He was, I think he had a gold, like 4 silver and a bronze.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'd love to chat with him for sure. All right, just a few more quick questions, guys, and both of you answer here one at a time. Gabriel, we'll go to you first. Do you have a book, movie, documentary, or TV series that you've come across here recently that you'd recommend?
Does it have to be related to human performance?
No, not at all. Anything.
I guess series wise, I watch Game of Thrones. It's just for entertainment. So
yeah,
I'm a Game of Thrones guy.
There's a lot of those out there, so that's a good one.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's I always go back to like Band of Brothers. You guys have seen that series, I'm sure, but maybe I watch it regularly. So recent for me, yes, watching it again. It's just I'm blown away about like history and sacrifice and military history, and just to see that time period and what those guys did was just, I'm blown away by it.
That was one of the best books I ever read. That was.
I haven't read the book. They do the series like a couple of times.
Yeah, the series is great. The book is fantastic.
Awesome. Well, guys, we very much appreciate you coming on. It was a great conversation. Love to have you guys back on at some point to talk a little bit more. Any of your team members, do you guys have any parting words or anything coming up you want our listeners to know about?
I'd say, high level, I'd say all the, for all the athletes and tactical athletes out there, just like, thanks for what you do, for the tactical athletes, the sacrifice and the services, the things that, time away from their family, just appreciate it. The frontline workers right now that are out there, that are, exposing themselves in more vulnerable situations, we thank you for what you do. Thank you for your service. And also anything that we can ever do to kind of help and support anybody that's ever interested and want to reach out to us. We're, super responsive. Get back to everybody who emails to us. So.
That's exactly it. I mean, that's, I'll echo exactly what Adam said. It's why we do what we do. It's we want to serve the people who serve us. And to us, they're the most critical people. And I think over the last 10 months, people have always appreciated, but I think they now have an even finer appreciation for everything they do.
Yeah, no doubt. Incredible and unbelievable. And the website, guys, is O2X.com. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And then the Instagram handle?
Yeah, at O2X. Oh, like optimize.
Awesome. Yep. So to our listeners out there, guys, go check that out and take a look at what they're doing and get involved and support and anything that you can do. And also be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com. Check out our services and upcoming events. Also check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. Until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.